Well, sir, thank you. 4 years
That's
ago,
the spirit, isn't it?
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Um, 4 years ago, you were asked if you had made any mistakes.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to play gotcha, but I wonder, when you look back over the long arc of your presidency, do you think in retrospect that you have made any mistakes? And if so, what is the single biggest mistake that you may have made?
Gotcha. I have often said that history will look back and determine that which could have been done better, or mistakes I made. Clearly, putting a mission accomplished on an aircraft carrier was a mistake. It sent the wrong message. We were trying to say something differently, but nevertheless, it conveyed a different message. Obviously, some of my rhetoric has been a mistake. I thought long and hard about Katrina. Could I have done something differently? Like land Air Force One, either New Orleans or Baton Rouge. The problem with that is that law enforcement would have been pulled away from the mission, and then your questions, I suspect, would have been, how could you possibly have flown Air Force One into Baton Rouge, and police officers that were needed to expedite traffic out of New Orleans were taken off the task to look after you? I believe that running the Social Security idea right after the '04 elections was a mistake. I should have argued for immigration reform. And the reason why is that, one of the lessons I learned as governor of Texas, by the way, is legislative branches tend to be risk adverse. In other words, sometimes legislatures have the tendency to ask, why should I take on a hard task when the crisis is not imminent? And the crisis was not imminent for Social Security as far as many members of Congress was concerned. As an aside, one thing I proved is that you can actually campaign on the issue and get elected. In other words, I don't believe talking about Social Security is the third rail of American politics. As a matter of fact, think that in the future, not talking about how you intend to fix Social Security is going to be the third rail of American politics. And the one thing about the presidency is that you can only make decisions, on the information at hand. You don't get to have information after you've made the decision. It's not the way it works. And you stand by your decisions, and you do your best to explain why you made the decisions you made. There have been disappointments. Abu Ghraib obviously was a huge disappointment during the presidency. Not having weapons of mass destruction was a significant disappointment. I don't know if you want to call those mistakes or not, but things didn't go according to plan, let's put it that way. And, anyway, I think historians will look back and they'll be able to have a better look at mistakes after some time has passed. Along Jake's question, there is no such thing as short-term history. I don't think you can possibly get the full breadth of an administration until time has passed. Where does did a president's decisions have the impact that he thought they would, or he thought they would over time? Or how did this president compare to future presidents, given a set of circumstances that may be similar or not similar? I mean, it's just impossible to do, and I'm comfortable with that. Yeah, Mike.
One of the major objectives that the incoming administration has talked frequently about is restoring America's moral standing in the world. And many of the allies of the new president, and I believe the president-elect himself, has talked about how the damage that Gitmo, that harsh interrogation tactics that they consider torture, how going to war in Iraq without a UN mandate have damaged America's moral standing in the world.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, basically, what is your reaction to that? Do you think that is something that the next president needs to worry about?
I strongly disagree. with the assessment that our moral standing has been damaged. It may be damaged amongst some of the elite, but people still understand America stands for freedom, that America is a country that provides such great hope. You go to Africa, you ask Africans about Americans' generosity and compassion. Go to India and ask about, their view of America. Go to China and ask. Now, no question, parts of Europe have said that we shouldn't have gone to war in Iraq without a mandate, but those are a few countries. Most countries in Europe listen to what 1441 said, which is disclose, disarm, or face serious consequences. Most people take those words seriously. Now, some countries didn't, and even though they might have voted for the resolution, I disagree with this assessment that, people view America in a dim light. I just don't agree with that. And I understand Gitmo has created controversies, but when it came time for those countries that were criticizing America to take some of those detainees, they weren't willing to help out. So, I just disagree with the assessment, Mike. Listen, I tell people, yeah, you can try to be popular. In certain quarters in Europe, you can be popular by blaming every Middle Eastern problem on Israel. Or you could be popular by joining the International Criminal Court. Or I guess I could have been popular by accepting Kyoto, which I felt was a flawed treaty, and proposed something different and more constructive. And in terms of the decisions that I have made to protect the homeland, I wouldn't worry about popularity. What I would worry about is the Constitution of the United States and putting plans in place that makes it easier to find out what the enemy is thinking. Because all these debates will matter not if there's another attack on the homeland. The question won't be, were you critical of this plan or not? The question is, why didn't you do something? Do you remember what it was like right after September the 11th around here? In press conferences and opinion pieces and in stories that sometimes were news stories and sometimes opinion pieces. People were saying, how come they didn't see it? How come they didn't connect the dots? Do you remember what the environment was like in Washington? I do. When people were hauled up in front of Congress and members of Congress were asking questions about how come you didn't know this, that, or the other, and then we start putting, policy in place, legal policy in place to connect the dots, and all of a sudden people were saying, how come you're connecting the dots? And so, Mike, I've heard all that. I've heard all that. My view is that most people around the world, they respect America. And some of them doesn't like me. I understand that. Some of the writers and the, opiners and all that, that's fine. That's part of the deal. But I'm more concerned about the country and how people view the United States of America. They view us as strong, compassionate people who care deeply about the universality of freedom.